or it's from BC. I know he's been here for 30 plus years, but he's a BC native. And what they're getting here is an offensive player that's got a ton of skill, a ton of hockey sense that can make plays.
Hi, everyone. It's the Canes Corner podcast, and I am Adam Gold, and I thank you very much for spending a few minutes with us on this muggy, almost rainy, threatened Wednesday evening. Again, we're not going to be here for very long. We're going to be joined by Nick Bass. He does Canes prospects on Twitter. Also covers the Hurricanes prospects for Dobber Hockey, and we will discuss the prospect camp, development camp that just concluded over at Invisalign Arena. Get his thoughts. He was out there all 3 days. I know he's got affection, it seems, for Russian goalies. He's learning how to speak Russian. That'll be great. I don't want him to speak Russian when we are talking, but we got a lot of things to discuss with him, and he's going to join us in just a couple of minutes. All right, real quick before we get to Nick, I just want to kind of set us up for news of the day, and I'll kind of wrap it up when we are done talking about prospects. So here we are, a little bit more than a week out from the start of free agency. The draft is almost 2 weeks in our rearview mirror, and the Hurricanes, in all honesty, are not the same team they were at the end of last year. We have gone over it. So let's just focus on two very specific things. One is the status of Martin Necas, and the other is how you pay for three restricted free agents, Necas, Seth Jarvis, and Jack Drury, with only about between $13 and $14 million worth of cap space, assuming the Hurricanes are going to keep at least one extra player on the roster. The goalie will go down. Spencer Martin will go down. My guess is the Hurricanes will carry just 6 defensemen given health. And I think there will be an extra forward, but that forward will be a league minimum salary guy, either a young guy, probably not, unless he makes the team outright, or one of the veterans that Carolina got in free agency. But real quick about Martin Necas. I've been saying this for a long time. Even with all of the talk about he's going to be traded, they're shopping him around. This team. Apparently, well, we know that he rejected an offer to extend his contract with Columbus. Columbus wasn't going to make the trade unless Columbus could get him to sign a long-term deal. He wasn't going to do that. According to reports, he is also scuttled contract extensions with both Winnipeg and Buffalo, which means he's going to be here. Whether it's a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal, doesn't really matter. He's going to sign his contract. Maybe it'll get to arbitration, but we're looking at about maybe $6.5 million for Necas. Here's my point about Marty has always been the same thing. A, he wants to be great. I don't think it matters where, but he wants to be great. He has a desire to be great. He wants to be needed. I think he craves responsibility. And I think he can get that here, especially if you're looking at the roster. The Hurricanes are going to need goal scoring. Necas can give you that. They're going to need some dynamic offensive play. Obviously, he can give you that. And honestly, when you look at the players out, especially the forward group, you're missing a major penalty killer in Teuvo Teravainen. No other way around that, right? Necas was killing penalties until Seth Jarvis took his spot. And by the way, we don't know what the status of Jesper Fast is either. There's no reason why Necas can't resume killing penalties. And in my opinion, I think the head coach is going to put that in front of him. And I speak to Rod often enough to know this. Rod Brindamore thinks that Martin Necas can be an impact player in this league. He wants to get more out of him. He demands more out of him. I think Necas demands a lot out of himself. I think that this can work here. I think it can work really well to the point where Necas completely rebuilds his value and maybe almost prices himself out of the Hurricanes market. I'm kidding, because I think if they believed that he could be a great player and had established that here this year, I think there's a potential for a long-term contract right here. So I'm not ruling anything out with Necas. I think it can work. I'm pretty sure the head coach thinks it can work. So it'll be up to Marty. Is he dialed in? Is he all in with this team, with this group, with his friends? Because he has friends here. And we'll see how it goes. But I am optimistic for the future of Martin Necas. Now, quickly, how you pay for it? Because Seth Jarvis, if I'm Tom Dundon, I'm going long-term. I'm going 8-year contract for Jarvis, whatever the number's got to be. It'll be probably between 7.5 and 8. That's my guess, between 7.5 and 8. You might be looking at the Andrei Svechnikov deal for Seth Jarvis. But I think you got to do it. You got to do it 8 now. And honestly, he can sign another 8-year deal as long as if that's still the CBA when he turns 29. Unbelievable. He's 22. So when he turns 30. Jarvis, a wonderful player. We know it. All situation player. We know it. And maybe it can even take another step up in terms of taking faceoffs. That's another thing for Martin Necas. You want to work on it? You want to be a faceoff? You want to be a center? I don't know if you can be a center, but you want that responsibility of faceoffs? Want to kill penalties? That's one way to do it. Get better in the faceoff circle. It's been a dreadful run for Marty in that category. So very, very quickly, how do you pay for it? I don't know. Do you think the organization is going to buy out Jesperi Kotkaniemi? I don't. I do not. Kotkaniemi is going to be here in some capacity. I think his contract is untradeable. So unless Jesper Fast is a long-term IR situation, they're going to have to clear some money. If Necas is going to be 6, Jarvis is going to be nearly 8, and Drury is going to be almost 2, let's say 2, that math doesn't add up. You're going to have to clear $3 million, $4 million off the decks, probably. 6, 8, 2, that's 16. Right now, the Hurricanes are between 13 and 14. Probably going to have to clear a little bit more. Evgeny Kuznetsov? Are they going to, I don't know how you terminate, you can't terminate the contract. Can't waive him. Nobody's going to take him. You're still going to be responsible for it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. But I would keep my eye on the Evgeny Kuznetsov situation because that's something that Carolina, I like him. I think he is a big moments player. I would not want to get rid of him. But knowing what I know about this organization, they are not going to buy out Kotkaniemi. Hey, they didn't want to buy out Scott Darling. I think that's where you find the money. Just a little food for thought. All right, now let's get to the prospects. And for that, we bring in Nick Bass, Maine prospect. Also has a personal Twitter, Nick, but not.
Yeah, that's me.
You're learning Russian. Is that why you spoke to all the Russian goalies down at prospect camp?
That wasn't the main outcome I was looking for. Velmakin, in complete honesty, kind of just introduced himself to me, and really? he was alone, and not that I felt bad for him in any way. He just had a personality that I kind of wanted to talk to while everybody else was with somebody. So I sat down and spoke with him, and he's just a bubbly guy. He has one of those personalities that you just love to talk to, love to be around. He was a joy to talk to for the past few days.
Awesome. All right. So let's get to, by the way, you're in my Substack. So I've been following along the prospect camp through you. I have not had a chance to get down there. So let me just allow you the canvas to broad brush what you've seen, guys that have jumped out. I know you started every day's Substack with the same guy, maybe because he was the first player on the ice. But if you want to start with the kid from Quinnipiac, that's fine. But your overall impressions, 3 days of developmental camp.
So day 1, day 2, day 3, and including the scrimmage, which separated sessions. Charles Alexis Legault, the righty from Quinnipiac, who signed this past summer, every single time he was the first player on the ice. Didn't matter what group, didn't matter where. He was first on the ice. That first day, I was standing around and he was standing next to me, fully dressed, fully geared, and everything. And I asked him, you look a little early here, and he's like, yeah, I'm ready to go. He's excited. He's ready to be out there. He impressed me a lot. His defensive ability was already very known at Quinnipiac. I kind of feel like that's what he was drafted for. He is very proactive. His offensive ability in the second half of the season just started to jump. He went on a very long point streak. And in camp, he showed a lot of the shot. He has a very good shot. The passing is there. He's turning into a very much so complete player. And I think showing up early shows that work ethic that he has to get better.
Not to mention the size, 6'3", almost 210. And he's just 20 years old. So obviously has I don't know that he's going to get taller. But I mean, I'm still waiting. But he's obviously he's got a thick body, and he can probably get a little bit bigger and stronger in the Hurricanes. If we're looking at, maybe down the road, the one thing Carolina is definitely going to need at some point, although I'm going to ask you about Alexander Nikishin later, is, a little bit more size and some like grit on the back end, some toughness on the back end. And he's certainly got a big body. I don't know if he's going to play that way, but he certainly has a big body. All right. I want you to tell me what jumped out at you, but I'm gonna at least trigger the as we continue this conversation with Bradley Nadeau. And when I opened this with the audio, the highlight of Nadeau being drafted by Carolina very late in the first round, not in this year's draft, last year's draft. He had a great year as a freshman at Maine. Signed his entry-level deal. We saw him for, a game, 2 games at the very end of the season. He's got offensive ability. He's not the biggest guy in the world. But your thoughts on what you've seen from Nadeau and what you might expect?
Yeah, actually, earlier this year, I work with Dobber Prospects. They allowed me the ability to go up to the University of Maine to watch Maine and UMass. Spectacular games. He really showed that he has just this innate ability to understand the 50 feet of offensive zone that he has. His brain works in ways that I don't get, complete honesty, but he is just a special player. Obviously, everybody knows the shot. It's NHL ready at this point. It's incredibly powerful, especially in that one game where he played. He was in the OB spot. He ripped 3 in a row without hesitation. His passing was the biggest thing that took a jump at Maine this year. It went from being good at the BCHL level to becoming a very strong point of his game at Maine. And I also had the chance to talk with him at that game, and most of his family was there because it was the last weekend of home games. They are such a humble group of people because they come from a small town. He is just a very soft-spoken, hardworking as well individual. He was very happy to get to North Carolina and experience the weather. He was very happy about that.
Who could be happy about what we never, like, I've been to Maine in the summer. You can't, it blows my mind that we could say that North Carolina weather in the summer is better than Maine weather in the summer. But I'm like, I don't want to waste time here on YouTube debating the weather. All right. So is Nadeau, like, I don't know that any of these guys are advanced, so advanced that, yeah, they could make the team because they're advanced. But are the skills NHLable even right now? I mean, could you see him having, say, 4 really good preseason games and making this decision difficult for Rod?
I think, yes, 100% he can do that. I think he can take the Unger Sorum route like last year, which I guess we'll probably talk about later. Yeah. He can take that route where he'll stick around through camp. And seeing as the Canes do have a need potentially for a goal scorer, especially on the left-hand side, I think he could fit in well in that spot, and I think he could succeed. I do think the shot is ready. I think the passing is on its way. I think the skating is already there. He understands how to use his body in the right ways. He's withstood a lot of checking from Badinka and Legault in the scrimmages today. I was very happy to see that. I think he's ready personally, but I might be a little biased.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, we can always fall in love and overrate prospects, but I do know this. If we were looking at what Carolina's lineup is going to look like, and if we were just staring at the top two lines, let's assume it's Svechnikov, Aho, and Jarvis as the top line. Let's assume that it's Kokaniemi in the middle, because I think that's what's probably going to happen, with Necas on the right. Somebody's got to be on the left. Is that more likely to be, and it's going to be somebody who can score, is it more likely to be a Bradley Nadeau, or is it possibly, heck, it could be Jordan Martinook, to be perfectly honest. I'm not even going to lie, and I don't think I would completely hate it, which of course people will lose their minds over. I'm a Martinook stan. I think he adds a lot beyond just the checking forward. Where is Felix Unger-Sorum in that list?
He obviously, everybody saw him last year, and then he went back to Sweden, went to Leksands, put up a very, very good year for a barely 18-year-old. Went to the World Juniors, was spectacular there, even after getting that nasty, nasty hit by Rutger McGroarty. He still got up and played in the next period and played well, even though he might tell you he didn't play as well. And I would say he's ready as well. I think everything about him, especially his brain on the whole 200 feet. He's smart in every zone. His playmaking is there. His shot might not be for a little bit, but everything else is ready. I think the one thing that might hold him back in that argument is just that he's a right winger through and through instead of a left winger. So if there's a spot open there, I think he could make a tough call, make a spot.
This is why we have Nick Bass here. I don't know my left from my right. All right. What area of the Hurricanes of their prospect depth chart has the most prospects in it?
That's a very tough one. I would say left wing or right wing is especially deep. They spend
we know nothing down the middle, really.
They after Suzuki, and people will still debate me on Suzuki, it gets kind of rough. But the left and the right wing, there's a ton of talent overall that is very good. On the left, in my eyes, you have Nadeau, and you have their most recent draft pick, Artemonov, who is a very good player. He might not have the highest ceiling of any prospect, but he's also not going to have the lowest floor. He's going to be one of those fun players. The right-hand side has Unger-Sorum. It has Jackson Blake, has a few other guys, and Jackson Blake is somebody that I talk about a good amount. I think he is another one of those full 200-foot players on the right-hand side. He was showing off today, playmaking-wise. He was doing everything with his feet and with the puck on his stick. He was very, very good today. And then one last one on the left that I need to mention, because he, I think, scored 4 today in the scrimmages overall, was their new Russian that they just brought over, Gleb Trikazov, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He came over, spent a lot of time in youth Russia last year due to some things that he and his coach at the KHL level might not have seen eye to eye, is what I have been told. But he comes over and he showed out today. His shot, that's offensively, he is very, very good. I want to see him in Chicago first, no matter what, because I think he needs to develop the other parts of the game. But as an offensive player, he is something special.
All right, we are talking with Nick Bass at Canes Prospect, also at Nick But Not on Twitter. 2 Twitter handles. I can only manage one. I don't know how you do that. I would send tweets out that I meant from one that I would put on the other. That my brain can't. I can't even watch two screens at the same time. I can't do a second screen event. All right, so you're out there for 3 days. We just talked. There was 20 some odd players out there. Plus the goalies. Why don't we just let me just direct you there. We have the one goalie, the new one. I can't pronounce his name. Maybe you can. He's like 6'5", and he is. If you think Pyotr Kochetkov is personality plus, this guy looks like he is Pyotr Kochetkov maybe on steroids. What did you see from him and the other goalies?
So I believe the one you're speaking of is Ruslan Hazayev. I have been told that many times by Velmakin himself that's how you pronounce it.
Okay. He's signed already. He's going to be in North America this year.
He will start in Chicago if I'm not mistaken. He is unbelievable. If you can imagine taking the Pyotr Kochetkov play style and just adding it to a goalie that is 6'4", that's what you're going to get. He played out of his mind in the youth leagues in Russia. I think he ended up with like a .93 for his career in the MHL, which is something that doesn't happen that often. In the crease, he's solid. I really do like it. He took a nasty puck right off the collarbone today, had a good welt on it that was not the most pleasant thing to look at, but took it, came back out and still played. I really like his play style. I think if you're talking about prospect goalies anyways, and you're not including Pyotr Kochetkov in that discussion, I would confidently say that Kazayev or Haziev, I still mispronounce it, is definitely the number one guy there.
All right, and he'll be in Chicago probably with Spencer Martin unless there's an injury with the Hurricanes, while at this point, Freddie Anderson and Pyotr Kochetkov man the crease here. I still believe that the Hurricanes need to move Freddie Anderson, but I don't think they're going to. At this point, I think if they were going to, I think they would have already done it. All right, so any of the other goalies? You mentioned Val Malkin. I paired him up with a Pittsburgh forward. Any of the other goalies that jumped out to you as being players to watch?
So I kind of feel bad. They were supposed to also have Patrick Hammerla and Jakob Vondras there. But as I came to find out on Monday, thanks to Patrick's dad, their flight coming back to North America got delayed a lot. And they didn't end up getting there until Tuesday. Even worse, their stuff is currently either in London or Paris. They don't know.
Wow.
So they sat behind me during the scrimmage. I think Patrick recognized me, which freaked me out in complete honesty, but he mentioned that he was not very
Because he played in
happy.
North America, right? He played in North America.
He played in the QMJHL, I think 2 years ago. Played there for 2 years. Last year he spent in Finland, and he himself said that it wasn't his greatest thing. He struggled a lot. It wasn't his best year. But I do like him when he obviously can play. I didn't get to watch any of him, but he was a very nice guy to talk to. Nikita Kwap, the German goalie with probably the greatest last name in the system. It's up for discussion. He was a stonewall early in the morning skate. He was making saves that had forwards and coaches giving him stick taps and yells. And I was very impressed with what I saw. I want to see him play more at the senior level in Germany over the past few years where he has been. He's gotten, I think, a game or two, but he moved teams recently. And I'm really hoping he gets a lot more playing time because I am intrigued by his future. He's one of those big, tall goalies that plays very nicely in net.
All right. Just a few more minutes. So other guys that jumped out to you I clearly, until you get to the NHL, I have no idea who you are. It's just, I do that with all sports. It's not just hockey. That's why I'm trying to become friends here with Nick Bass. So, other guys that kind of wowed you with something that stood out to you.
So I'll start with, I had an award that I started last year. There's no actual trophy or anything like that. It was just a little nameplate. The UC Jokinen Award of players in shootouts that couldn't miss. They were the greatest.
Right.
Last year it was Lucas Mercury. This year it is the shortest guy they drafted, Justin Poirier. He could not miss in the shootout. And I think that's just because his shot is one of those things that everybody loves. It's this, I would compared it to Bradley Nadeau's coming out from last year. The one thing obviously with him, he's 5'8". We don't know if he's going to grow, but he does use his frame very well for his size. I will say
he's stocky, isn't he?
Yeah. Whenever his skating frame on that first day when they were doing resistance testing, his skating was really funny to watch because it was maybe not funny is the right word, but it's very short strides. But once he gets past his first 2-3 steps, he is blazing quick. I was not expecting it, but he was moving out there. In terms of another guy that I would call the most improved, kind of like how I saw Legault last year took a step from freshman to sophomore, and obviously now he's signed. I think Jaden Perron, the forward from the University of North Dakota, he's another one of those smaller forwards, but I can confidently say he improved his skating from last year to now. He also, his mindset now, he's getting to the middle a lot more than you would expect a guy who is only 5'9", 5'10". You wouldn't expect a guy like that to actively want to go to the middle of the ice and have a lot of success going to the middle of the ice, but he is just one of those players that can do it. His offense is very good. I think this year at the University of North Dakota, maybe in a bigger role now that Blake's not there anymore, I think he's probably going to have a much better year.
Yeah, but the Hurricanes have 2 North Dakota. Are they Fighting Sioux, or are they? I
want to say they're the Fighting Hawks, but
Hawks.
I
probably were the Fighting Sioux and are now the Fighting Hawks because that's probably what you need to do now. Do you think Jackson Blake has a chance to make the team?
I've talked about this a lot before. Obviously the Sean Walker and Shane Gostisbehere signings. I was very bullish that there's a group of 4. It was Nadeau, Blake, Ungersorm, and Morrow. I thought out of those 4, you were probably going to have maybe 1, maybe 2 make the roster. I think Jackson Blake is a special player. Obviously, we all saw that at North Dakota last year, becoming a Hobie Baker finalist. And unfortunately, I don't think he was ever going to win. Going up against Macklin Celebrini, also the voters obviously like the East a little bit more. But he was one of those players that not drove UND by himself, but he was one of those players that just took over when he needed to. He was just their dominant playmaker in all situations. He even played a little bit, and I do mean a little bit, of the penalty kill, but power play, he was exceptional. 5-on-5, he was great skating wise. I think there is a chance he can make it. It really does depend on how these guys do in camp.
Yeah. And again, my conversations with people around the team, I don't know, Eric Tulsky said this the other day that, they wanted to leave room. I don't believe they wanted to leave room for a young player or a couple of young players to make the team. But I think it has worked out that way, where there is room for young players to make the team. Because I think that most of their free agent signings, with the exception really of Roslovic, who's on a $2.8 million 1-year deal, and William Carrier, not Carrier, who's on a 6-year deal at $2 million per. Those guys are going to be on the team. All the other signings, I think, to me, are organizational depth. And you need to have those guys in Chicago, and you need to have them have the ability to call them up, to get you out of a week. But, yeah, I think Nadeau, and I've never seen him other than the game we saw. Blake, same thing. I think those guys, Ungersorm, I don't think there's going to be as big a need on the right-hand side unless Jesper Fast goes on long-term IR. I don't really know. All right, final thing for you, Nick, and then we'll let you go. At Kane's Prospects on Twitter, also at Nick but not on Twitter. You choose. How many? Because who knows? Anybody can make the roster. How many will say top 9 NHL forwards, top 4 NHL defensemen? Do you think future, and obviously not this year, future, do you think you might have seen?
If I'm going through forwards wise, Blake, Nadeau, Ungersorm, Gleb Trikazov, I think, Jaden Perron, Noel Gunler, if things shake out like he wants them to, and finally has a fully healthy season and doesn't go through the unfortunate things he went through in the league of last year. I think those guys are maybe not like surefire top 9 guys, but I think those are the guys that have the biggest offensive potential, as well as like Justin Poirier. Lucas Mercury, I seen like he's the perfect 4th line center as just this big body bruising forward that'll kill you on a forecheck. trying to just run through the list of guys. Oscar Voulet as well, one of their more recent draft picks I did like. And
this
then,
year.
Yeah, and then Artemonov as well. I was incredibly high on Artemonov. I see him as a top 9 player. He's gonna. A lot of people compared him to Michael Bunting. He plays exactly like Michael Bunting. He'll piss you off on the forecheck, and he's gonna make sure he does it. Defensively, obviously everybody knows Alexander Nikishin. He's obviously the best player in the system. He's a top 5 prospect that currently is not playing at the NHL level or is in North America. I think Scott Morrow is going to have a bright future as a power play specialist in the top 4. I think Charles Alexis Legault as well. I can see him being a top 4 guy. It really does depend down the line. Yoel Nystrom, a very solid 200-foot right-handed defenseman. Dominic Bedenka, it's one of those things where I'm not low on the guy. I honestly just haven't watched him a ton. His offense was very solid from what I saw. Even though, weirdly enough, his defense was the stuff that's shown through at the senior level.
Okay.
I did like what I saw from Noel Franzen, one of their more recent picks as well. And some guys that didn't go to camp for various reasons. Dominic Fensore, who played for BU 1 or 2 years ago at this point. He is an addicting skater. He dominated the ECHL this past season, got called up to the AHL, and from what I was told, because I didn't watch a lot of Chicago Wolves games through fault of my own, he was one of their best defensemen, if not the best, that was playing there. He was very good on the power play. He played a little bit of a penalty kill. He's a very solid 200-foot defenseman, and obviously the skating is a big factor.
Yeah, I mean, because he's small. He's like 5'7" or 5'8". So he's got that to overcome. But yeah, I remember watching him a couple of years ago at prospect camp when I had that ability to do that, and I was blown away because it's got to be. It might even have been before the pandemic when I saw Dominic Fensore skating around. I mean, at the prospect camp. I'm trying to remember how long ago it was. It wasn't just a couple of years ago. I think it was a lot longer than that. But he blew me away with his skating ability. All right, you mentioned Alexander Nikishin. I was told to ask you when he was coming over. The KHL season, they changed their calendar, so they're not even done. I don't think the playoffs are even done until the end of March. So it's very late into the regular season before we even can think about seeing Nikishin, maybe into the playoffs, and it depends on what Carolina's health situation is in the blue line. Not a lot of room on the left side of the ice with Slavin, Orlov, and Shane Gostisbehere. But what are your thoughts on Nikishin, and when he's ready, is he just stepping right into the lineup?
So this has been the guy that I have been asked about. I have probably talked about the most. Obviously, he's otherworldly. His development jump from his time at Spartak Moscow to his time at SKA has been meteoric. He has been an unbelievable player. He has fully developed into probably the best defenseman in the KHL. Offensively, he leads their power play, their first power play, which was ranked very highly in the KHL. Defensively, he is on their first defensive unit going on the penalty kill. 5-on-5, he's putting up points that haven't been seen in 10 years. I think now he has the 3rd highest scoring season in KHL history from a defenseman, and he is 22 years old. Now, the KHL, I know they just went in, they're trying to go independent from the IIHF, and I know everybody, at least once a week, I get asked, when is he coming over? If I'm not mistaken, when SKA's playoff run ends, whenever that is, if they win the cup, if they don't win the cup, whatever, I believe he will sign a contract. It'll be 2 years. That is solely because of age. There's nothing wrong there. He'll get 2 years. He'll get the max amount of money. He'll get basically anything he wants that is legally allowable within the CBA. NHL impact, he is going to be a top 4 defenseman. I have said in the past that if Jacob Slavin didn't exist on the Carolina Hurricanes roster, he would be your number 1 left-handed defenseman, if not your number 1 defenseman. He is just that good. He is dominating a men's league, which is not I wouldn't say it's comparable to the NHL.
It's the second best league in the world.
That's what I say. I think it's the second best league in the world, and he is 22 years old and dominating on one of the best teams. He is going to step in and have an immediate impact. I do not believe it'll be this year because I think it's either late March or April when the playoffs will end. He will sign a contract and then visas and everything. I don't think he'll debut this upcoming season. I think in 2025, by the time Dmitry Orlov's contract runs out, if they do not re-sign him, it's a very seamless transition to go from Orlov to Nikishin.
That's my intel as well, but I have never seen him play. You have, so I will take your word for it. Nick Bass at Canes Prospects, at Nick But Not. I appreciate your time. Dobber Hockey as well. Thank you very much. I hope you'll do this again with me.
I will. Anytime you want me, I'm around. So
all right, good. Hey, you don't have to tell me that twice, man. I enjoy talking to you because these are things that I do not have the bandwidth for. So thank you very much for doing this, and we'll talk again.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You got it. There you go, Nick Bass. All right. This gets me right to Brady Shea. Hurricanes were very interested in Brady Shea. The one thing that was standing in the way, well, there were two things standing in the way with the Hurricanes and Brady Shea because there was mutual interest. One, they weren't going to do 7. They want to go to 7, which the Hurricanes, this is what they are, man. They're trying to get a little bit off, a little haircut. It's really what got in the way. I've told you my thoughts on Jake Gensel. I think the Hurricanes valued him a little bit lower than he valued him. And honestly, he got 9 a year from Tampa, which means that his value at 8 times 8 was lower for Carolina, was lower than what the league was going to offer. And I think if it ever got to the open market, that number would have gone north of 9. But because that dragged on, Brady Shea didn't get a chance to get to. The Hurricanes didn't get a chance to get to Brady Shea. I think they believe that Nikishin could have played the other side, and they could have fit Shea in with Nikishin. Probably would have meant that somebody else was going. But ultimately, Rod doesn't like to play players on their offside if he can help it. He certainly doesn't like it with young players. And when they signed Shane Gostisbehere to the 3-year deal, three-year deal, to them, that was, all right, these are our lefties. We got righties. And to me, that pretty much closed off Brady Shea. They certainly could have gotten away with it this year. Right? But Nikishin seems to be the truth. The only caveat is that you just never know. That's why Carolina drafts so many Russians, because they believe that there's a lottery ticket somewhere in there. This is why they do this. This is why they drafted 6 this year. I don't know how many last year. But they believe that there is talent in Russia that is untapped, that is undervalued because it's difficult to get the players here. So we'll see how it works out. Hopefully Nikishin will come here. Maybe, who knows, maybe Carolina's in a deep playoff run, but again, more than likely because the calendar shifted. It'll be the start of next year, but there's a reason why everybody who wants to trade with Carolina asks for Alexander Nikishin. And the Hurricanes aren't giving him up. That pretty much does it for us today. Let me just recap at the very beginning. Some of you maybe joined late. And I forgot to mention this before. We're brought to you by the Aluminum Company of North Carolina. You can see it on the screen. If it's for the exterior of your home, you can check it out at thealuminumcompany.com. Siding, roofing, windows, entry doors, storm doors, gutter helmets. They got it all. Best customer service in the industry as well. I believe the Hurricanes will sign Martin Necas. I don't think it'll get to arbitration. I think they'll do, whether it's a 1-year deal, a 2-year deal, doesn't matter. He'll be here. Carolina controls his rights for 2 more years, this year and next year. Maybe they do just a 1-year deal. Maybe they do a 2-year deal. I don't know. It doesn't really matter to me. You'd like to not go through this. The last time Necas signed, an RFA contract, it was a 2-year deal, $3 million per. That number is going to probably double. It's probably going to be in the neighborhood of $6 million. But Martin Necas, all the talk about, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. My opinion, and through conversations, I think what Marty really needs, what he craves, is responsibility. Probably not going to come at center, because this is the way I believe the organization views him. The organization thinks he can be a great right wing. They believe he can be an okay center. They would rather have a great right wing than an okay center. I don't think they're completely against the idea of trying him at center, but faceoffs got to get better. Attention to details got to get better. Defensive responsibilities have to improve. But here's what I think will happen. I think Necas will become, once again, part of the penalty kill unit. Therein lies the responsibility. Hurricanes don't have many big bats in the middle of the order. Martin Necas can be one of the bigger ones. So I think he signs. I think he has a good year here. And I don't believe that the die is cast that he won't be here for a long time. I really don't. I think there is a future for Martin Necas here. And of course, as I say this, who knows? I could log off, check my email, and Necas has been traded, I don't know, to Utah. I have no idea. I think the Hurricanes will keep him, and I think the Hurricanes would like to keep him for the long haul. Now, you got to pay for it. You got to get Seth Jarvis done. You got to get Jack Drury done. I think those things are kind of waiting for Necas. And they see what they're going to do with Necas, what the number's going to be, what money they have to move around. I mentioned this at the beginning, but I'll reiterate it. Jesperi Kotkaniemi, 99.97% sure will be on the roster. They're not going to buy him out. So is anybody else around the league going to be interested in the player at that contract? Really? No. He's going to be here. And I think they're going to give him a crack at being the number 2 center. For good or bad, that's what I think they're going to do. Sometimes admitting the mistake is the most difficult thing to do. But with all that said, Necas will be. No, let me finish the thought. It's going around, isn't it? So if Kotkaniemi is going to be here, if you're not going to buy him out, and you can't count on Jesper Foss being a long-term injured reserve, this is not Jake Gardner, man. The Hurricanes don't want to be without Jesper Foss. He's a vital part of this team. So let's assume that that's not an opportunity. Where does the money come from to sign Necas, to sign Jarvis, to sign Drury? Combined, that's about $16 million. If the Hurricanes carry, I think, one extra forward or defense, then they have about between $13 and $14 million of space. And again, you're not long-term injured reserving Foss unless he's going to retire, because here's a guy, he's only got one more year left in his deal anyway. And I'm sure this will be the last year. So where do you get that money from? And just by, process of elimination, I won't be surprised if that money comes from figuring out a new home for Yevgeny Kuznetsov. I like him. I think he is a big moments player, but maybe for this particular team, for this roster, for the place they're at, that's like a bad team having in baseball, having a great closer. Like, why? Does Carolina need a big moments player? Sure. But what they need more than a big moments player, because those moments were kind of few and far between, even though he had a fairly impactful postseason. The Hurricanes need the day in, day out more than they need the big moments. So that's my hunch, is that they'll either, I don't think he's going to retire, although you never know. But the $3.9 million that they're responsible for with Yevgeny Kuznetsov, Carolina, to me, they'll find a way to move that and create enough space where not only can you have Necas, Jarvis, Drury, but you can have a little room. My thought. All right, we'll do this again as events warrant, hopefully. And by the way, congratulations to Doug Worf, my friend who's now the president of the Carolina Hurricanes. Hopefully get a chance to talk with him very soon as well, maybe in this particular forum. I thank you very much for hanging out. Appreciate all of you here on YouTube. Rate, subscribe, like, share, uh, whatever I should have said that I didn't say. But thank you very much for hanging out on the Canes Corner podcast. And we will see everybody very, very soon.